I guess.
Yeah.
All right, good evening. It is Wednesday, May 21st at 6 p.m. I'd like to call to order the Kaiser Planning Commission. So we're going to do something a little bit new tonight, just because I'm going to try to help Dawn out. And so for everybody present on the dais, I'm going to start with Mr. Lindsay. We're going to go around. Just please say your name. Dawn's trying a super cool new technology, and we're going to see if we can help her make sure she gets good transcripts. So, Mr. Lindsay, please start with you.
Okay. Joseph Lindsay, City Attorney.
That's real formal.
Shane Witham, Planning Director for the City of Kaiser.
Dina Horner, Assistant Planner.
Kyle Duran, Council Liaison.
Jeremy Grenz, Planning Commissioner.
Matt Lawyer, Planning Commissioner.
Sarah Hedges, Planning Commissioner.
Rob Witters, Planning Commissioner.
Adam Brown, City Manager.
Don Wilson, Deputy City Recorder.
Yay, we're going to make Dawn so successful with this new adventure she's taken on. You know, anytime we can make Dawn's life better, the better our lives get down the road. So thank you for that. I'd like to call up, so we're so extra special in the Planning Commission that we actually like to be part of the Procrastinators Unitas meetings that start in April. And we're going to start by talking about volunteer appreciation. That was in April, but we're bringing Leslie forward now because we like to do things our own way. And Leslie, come on forward, please. Talk to us about annual volunteer recognition.
Hello, I'm Leslie Reiswick, and I'm representing the Volunteer Coordinating Committee. And I wrote something for you all today, and I brought cookies. We have certificates and pins for you. Kaiser's a special place that is our home. I'm truly grateful and appreciative of each and every one of you that sits in front of me today. All those working behind the scenes of the city to make everything run. No man or woman does this work alone. You all are amazing people putting in the work every day. Volunteers are priceless. Thank you for your dedication, service, and time. My definition of a Kaiserite, which is all of you, is someone who wears the city like a shield on their chests with great pride beyond belief. They put on their shoes every day, ready to work. They have their tools at hand to get the job done. They wear a hard hat that protects them every day and lets them know clearly what they are to do with great decisiveness and wisdom. They are the mighty Celtics of this city. Thank you guys for all you do, battling every day, doing what you do best, loving Kaiser and all its people. We are very grateful for the Planning Commission, and we know it's a lot of work, and so we just wanted to thank you, and I will pass out the goodies.
That's the best one I've ever seen. By like a lot, and we've had some really good, Leslie, that was incredible. Thank you.
Okay, well, I brought cookies. I'm going to put them back. Pass out your certificates.
Wow. Like, hey, step up your game there, Volunteer Coordinating Committee. Leslie just set a very, very high bar for, and I guess it's important to say thank you as well for being a volunteer and doing that work. I think you get to listen to a lot of people coming forward and then make the hard choices as to who to recommend to the city council. And so thank you for doing that. And you've been doing it for a while and you made some great recommendations for this body. So thank you for your service and time and effort as well.
You're not Lindsay.
No, I'm not.
Okay, you are Matt Lawyer.
I try to be.
All right.
Thank you very much.
There you are. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. These certificates are cool. I got mine, I think,
Thank you so much.
I got mine last month at the Parks Commission, and it's the first one of these I got, and I put it up in my office. It's really awesome to have.
Are we supposed to be getting these every year?
I don't know. I think next year's a Lambo.
She's really raised the bar here.
Yeah.
This is,
Like, I think the first year, we were on the planning commission together, and the first year the gal comes in and says, I'm supposed to bring you cookies. We didn't really know what was going on. And it was very nice. She was very, nervous to do it, and it was very thoughtful, the cookies. But yeah, this was a fantastic job, Leslie. Thank you so much. All right. Anything to add to that? No?
Don't forget the cookies.
Don't forget the cookies. Yes, Great idea. All right, we have consideration of the March 2025 minutes. Is there any motion on the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Grants and a second by Commissioner Witters to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously with 3 absent. All right, so now we're going to move on to appearance of interested citizens. I do have folks signed up for public hearing, which we'll talk about here in just a bit. Does anybody want to bring anything forward now, not relative to the public hearing? We actually have an audience, so this is very exciting. No? Yes?
We represent
All right, come on up, and if you would, please make sure your microphones turn on, and if it's specific to what we're going to talk about under the public hearing tonight, we'll hold for there. But if not, and you just want to talk to us generally, great. Please state your name and city of residence for the record, and tell us what you think.
Kim Pagels, I live on McLeod. We are very concerned as McLeod Gupser Association and residents about that, the traffic being dumped.
Okay, so I'm going to press pause on you. That is under our public hearing tonight, right? So, and that, which one's that, Shane? Is that?
We're doing it first.
Yeah, so that's going to be under 5A, so that's going to be basically right after this. So I'm going to, if it's okay, I'm going to call you back up for that, because we have to capture everything legally, otherwise, you know, the city attorney gets really mad and then yells at us for procedural issues and stuff, so, thank you. All right, no one else? Okay, great, let's move on. So we're going to go into item number 5A, which is text amendment to, text amendment case 2025-06, amending Kaiser Code Appendix A, Development Code Section 2.110 commercial mixed use related to audio-oriented uses. I'll open the public hearing at 6:03. Shane.
Thank you, Chair Lawyer, Planning Commissioners. So yeah, its first public hearing tonight is for a text amendment to modify the commercial mixed-use zoning designation. Staff report kind of lays out what it is, but I'm going to explain it because there is a little bit of confusion. It is a little bit confusing. So essentially, a little bit of backstory. Kaiser Station is broken into sub-areas. There's Area A, which is like where Target and Lowe's basically think, that would be east of the train tracks, north of Shamawa/Lock Haven. That's Area A, the big area that kind of developed first. And then Area B would be west of the train tracks, where Kaiser Station runs through, where the transit center sits. And so the transit center and the vacant land that's all on the north side of Lock Haven, that's what we call Area B. And then Area C is across the way. Area D is where Chick-fil-A and the hotel's going up right now, and the other two, 7-Eleven, that's Area D in the jug handle. So there's these A, B, C, and D, these different areas in Kaiser Station were developed way back in the early 2000s when the city went through a large project for comprehensive plan zone changes and establishing underlying designations. So when that happened, Area B adopted a use restriction which had previously existed on River Road around Shamawa. And you'll see in the proposed language, there's some strikeout, which is honestly kind of funny because that area doesn't exist anymore because it went away when we adopted the revitalization plan in 2019. But there had been an area way back into the 90s that was around Shamawa and River specifically, and it kind of ran down a little bit towards James and up towards Wolf and Janet, that basically said, hey, no more drive-throughs, no more auto-oriented things, because there's all this congestion on River Road. And so that kind of lived there forever. Well, when Area B got zoned commercial mixed use, they tacked on and said, hey, that is what we've been doing and applied as a standard around Shamawa and River. We're going to apply it at this Area B of Kaiser Station as well. It's kind of this entryway into Kaiser Station, concerned about traffic and how it's all going to work up there anyway. And so that use restriction has lived there forever. Since the inception of Kaiser Station. Basically, the city was approached a request was made, a formal request that's in the packet. Formal request was made by a prospective development group that have entered into letters of intent with the city to purchase the properties that right now in Area B, the city owns the majority of the property, not all of it. There's an area we call the Docks, which is right on the corner of McLeod and Lock Haven. Salem Radiology owned that, purchased it from the city years ago. I've heard that they've recently sold it. Don't exactly know the status. I'm not a title officer or anything. But so the city has signed letters of intent with Raising Cane's, which is a restaurant, chicken finger restaurant, and also with Terra Firma LLC. And so we received a request on behalf of Clutch and Cane's to consider amending the code to allow as a conditional use, as opposed to just outright prohibited, never can do it, but to allow as a conditional use the drive-through associated with an eating and drinking establishment, as well as gasoline service station. And I put in the staff report, gasoline service station, that was a little bit of a wild card. I didn't expect that. Fully expected that we would be here for a text amendment, at least to have a public hearing and consider it. Because honestly, at the time that the letter of intent was signed at council, my boss, the city manager, actually indicated to council, staff will be working with these folks to identify what kind of process would have to be pursued in order to move forward with actually developing the property. So what we have before you, and it is a little hard, we did receive, I placed on the dais, there was 2 letters that came in after the packet was published. One in support of this concept, one opposed that I just got this afternoon. And I know in looking at the letters, the one I got in opposition, understand 100%. I think there might have been a little bit of confusion on what the text amendment is doing. Part of the strike-through language in this zone is to clean up what effectively was eliminated when we rezoned all of River Road to mixed use and adopted the River Cherry Overlay District. So back in the day, most of River Road was zoned commercial mixed use prior to 2019. But when we did our revitalization plan, we actually rezoned it, and in the River Cherry Overlay District, those auto-oriented uses are only allowed in the centers as a conditional use. And so it basically replaced it, but this coming to the forefront was like, oh, the only CM zone property is in Area B right now in the city of Kaiser. But that language in there with all that restriction and extra language doesn't really make any sense because it doesn't apply to anywhere. So we were kind of making an attempt to clean that up. The substantive change, though, is to allow for, as a conditional use, drive-through in association with eating and drinking, as well as gasoline service stations in Area B, which currently, as we sit today, neither one of those things could happen in Area B. So I wanted to try to clarify. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody in the audience as well. So that's what the language is proposing. Before Planning Commission and, the staff recommendation itself is like, hey, you guys need to consider it, think about it, let us know what you want to do. Ultimately, the gasoline service station, it was a little bit more of a surprise on my end. We have a signed letter of intent with Cane's, Raising Cane's. I know it's a restaurant that has drive-throughs, so I clearly know there is a desire to maybe allow that use. However, Terra Firma, I don't know what the future proposal looks like as far as what they want to actually develop. Obviously in my brain, oh, they're requesting a gas station. Maybe somebody wants to build a gas station. Yeah, it's probably fair to assume. So I think, from a policy perspective, the big questions for Planning Commission to consider are, one, is it appropriate to open up those uses as conditional uses? And is there special considerations that we should be considering beyond standard conditional use processes, which does allow for the city to place conditions to protect things for traffic and aesthetics and those types of things. It's somewhat broad, but should there be some more specific things addressed or considered if there's a recommendation to say, yeah, let's change the code that could allow a future land use application. The other thing I want to make real clear is the text amendment process is not a quasi-judicial land use application. It's not something somebody can apply for. People can petition the city and have lots of times to say, we'd like you to consider changing this rule. But it's not like an application. It really is a city-driven process. In this case, the master plan that's adopted for Area B has I think it's about a 26,000 square foot doctor's office on the corner of McLeod and. Hey, all right, they just kicked in. McLeod and Lock Haven. And then I believe it's like a 24,000 square foot movie theater. That some years ago, prior to COVID, the city was, there was a user that wanted to come and build a movie theater and lease land. And then also, I think I think it's about 10,000 square foot retail property there next to the transit. So that's what the master plan currently allows for. And if stuff started getting built, it would need to be built to that master plan, or the master plan would have to first be amended, or a new master plan would have to be applied for, and that would be the applicant-driven quasi-judicial land use process. Ultimately, public hearings would come before Planning Commission first, and recommendation to City Council, and City Council would approve that master plan. That master planned area clearly gives a lot more ability for the decision makers to scrutinize an application and require conditions versus a kind of a standard partitioning or staff level decision. So with that, I will try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Shane before we go to so Shane, I just want to be clear for the record. Just want to be clear for the record that the two letters that are on the dais are specific to this text amendment, okay? And then the ones in our packet are also for that text amendment as well?
Yes.
So we have a total of 4 written communications for the record. Mr. Lindsay, do we need to add anything on the record? You don't need to read them, just include it on the record below?
No, as long as you guys are saying, one's from a Christopher Rash
Oh, so you do, okay.
and one's from an Emily Holden. The other ones are already on the record
Okay.
because they're in the packet.
So we do have what appears to be 1 letter of support from Emily Holden and 1 letter of opposition from Christopher Rash, and those were received today on the dais. The other 2 are in the packet and noticed accordingly. All right, any other questions for staff or anything before we go to public testimony? No? Okay. I'd like to call up first Brittany Randall, if you would please come forward, state your name and city of residency for the record.
Chair Lawyer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just wanted to remind everybody testifying, it's 5 minutes.
We're doing 5 minutes?
Yep, and so there'll be a green light that goes up. The yellow light will kick on at a 1-minute warning, so.
Thank you. Okay, I think my microphone's on. My name is Brittany Randall. I am the owner and principal planner at Brand Land Use, 1720 Liberty Street Southeast in Salem. And it's weird for me to not be here having a big presentation for you defending my application, but I'm just here in support of the city's amendment. I did submit information to the city, which I believe is in your packet. And as Shane was discussing, there would be other reviews that would happen prior to any development, and those reviews are going to be subject to transportation impact analysis that have already been done. We need to stay within those. So we're supportive. We think that multiple things can be true at once. We could have uses that cater to all modes of transportation to finish off this Area B in Kaiser. So just wanted to express my support and thanks for the city bringing this forward. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Randall? No? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Robert Van? Welcome, and if you would, please state your name and city of residence for the record, and you've got 5 minutes, sir.
All right. Is this on? I guess it's on. Mr. Commissioner and staff, thank you very much for your time. My name is Robert Van. I go by RV. I am the development manager for Raising Cane's for this project. We look forward to being here. We're excited about getting back or getting into Oregon. This would be our first location up here. We think it's a great site. I assure you, we are considerably less square footage than what Shane mentioned. That's really it. I'm in support of the project, obviously, but we think it's a great site and look forward to working with everybody.
All right.
And I'll take any questions.
Any questions for RV? No? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I did hear under appearance of interested citizens, ma'am, did you want to come forward and speak on this issue? We can do competitive garbage basketball shooting if we want. Yeah, you both can come up. I would just ask, you don't get 10 minutes unless you want to do one each 5, yeah? We're not going to do the I'll yield my time thing. So individually, both please state your name and city of residence for the record, if you would.
My name is Tasha Rash.
Great. And are you a Kaiser resident?
Yeah, I'm a Kaiser resident. I
Great.
live on McLeod.
Perfect.
And I represent the neighborhood association.
Which neighborhood association?
The Greater Gubser.
Got it, thank you.
Kim Pagels, Kaiser resident, 31 years.
You said Kim, I'm sorry?
Yeah, Kim Pagels.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
I just want to start by saying that I oppose the proposed code change that would potentially allow for the construction of a gas station in the area. It poses a significant threat to the livability of the Gubser neighborhood, and it undermines the safe, healthy, harmonious environment we value. The presence of a gas station would introduce constant vehicular activity, noise, and pollution into our daily lives. And with the entrance from McLeod into the area, it would make our commutes longer and more stressful, and especially when you consider the Whitaker traffic, while adding noise and air pollution that would disrupt our peace and quiet in our cherished community.
Again, opposed. We are excited about Kane coming in.
Yes.
Just not to that location.
The gas station.
Welcome if you get in, but not excited about, I don't know if you guys have traveled on McLeod when Whitaker's letting out, but it's pretty congested. They are dropping right into McLeod, and it's really hard. The congestion, it's a safety issue. I mean, a serious safety issue, because where they're dropping it is so close to that light. And farther out would be the drop-in from Area B. So I don't know how that's gonna work. And so if they are dropping in the area, if they're dropping onto McLeod from Area B, then that means they're gonna travel down to McLeod, because they're not gonna be able to get back to Lock Haven. So it's a huge safety issue, huge. We have students walking. We have a lot of walkers that walk from Gubser to McNary to Whitaker, all down McLeod. So we have students walking from 2, 3, 4, 5, 30, sometimes 6. I saw students walking with their band instruments the other night, and their sporting gear bags. So that is a huge issue for our students in this community. It's a huge safety issue. I'm also proposing that we have a new TIA, new traffic amendment analysis. That one was last done in 2017. A lot has changed in our area. And we're gonna also, on McLeod, have that new residence where that house fire was at. You know, we're gonna be adding more housing in that area. So yeah, I am asking that you guys really think very hard, because it is that safety risk for our neighborhood and the well-being of the community, the Gubser community that already hosts the Kaiser Lights and everything. So, yeah.
And then one last thing, it would erode the charm of our neighborhood, making it less attractive to current residents and potential newcomers. The decline in desirability would not only affect home values, but the sense of pride that we have as a community. That's all I have.
Any questions? All right, thank you
Hopefully-
both.
Can I say one more thing?
No. Yes, please.
So this isn't my realm. You guys, I work in education, so this is not, I don't do city stuff.
You're saying we're more scary than students. That's okay.
I love the students. Yeah, you guys are
Commissioner Grants
scary.
totally understands that.
I can do high school students all day long. So are you saying that we will be able to have public hearings and bring the neighborhood into this decision? Or is that something you can't answer right now?
Shane, do you want to address process, please?
Yeah, and this is where, this is, like I kind of started off, this is a little bit of a confusing process because we are not talking about an actual proposal for anything.
Right.
Like, we're not talking about a site plan, we're not talking about any kind of engineering study that's been done to look at the site of how mitigations are going to be provided. In the future, we will do that because I know that these users are not going to develop what our master plan is that's adopted, where the movie theater sat, where the doctor's office sat. Like, that's not happening. Those users don't exist anymore. So whoever comes in, they're going to apply for a new master plan for that area. Now, the one fixed constant that we know of, the transit's built. So that's going to be pretty easy for them to master plan that site. The transit center's already there. So, but the remaining area, any future user is going to be looking at that and go, okay, we're going to site plan our area and this is what we want to do. That will go through the public hearing process at both Planning Commission and City Council for actual approval of that master site plan that includes things like uses, building massings, what the buildings look like, what kind of, right now the current master plan, it calls for a certain amount of landscaping buffering and, based on what was proposed. So that is a distinct, different future process that right now somebody couldn't make that application because if they brought an application to our office and said, I propose a drive-through restaurant, I would go, nope, just not allowed, like, period. So does that help answer?
Yeah, and I understood that from the first time you said
Okay,
that. I just-
yeah, so that's where those public hearings, just like tonight, this public hearing is for people to come and testify and provide information. Those future public hearings will be a lot, in my opinion, a lot better in that there will actually be a specific development proposal that folks are actually commenting on, what's going to happen or what could happen. And so that's kind of the difference with tonight's is, do you allow the use as a conditional use at all? Or, so.
Just think of the safety of the kids coming on that, they walk that AM and PM all day long. I mean, not during school hours, but that's huge, you guys, huge. We don't want to be in the news for something happening on our street for all that traffic.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. Gentlemen in the back, I'm going to offer you guys an opportunity. You just came in. We're in the middle of a public hearing on the text amendment code for commercial uses in the code. Is there anything you all wanted to bring up for the record? Are you here for? I'm just going to listen in. Okay. Okay. Go ahead and come on forward.
I also came late, just not as late.
No problem. So so for anybody that hasn't signed up, I'm gonna make sure that Dawn gets this document. I'm gonna actually pass that down to Dawn. Make sure you go see Dawn and fill out your information on the public, comment form. Go ahead and state your name and city of residence for the record, please, and you got 5 minutes.
AJ Nash, I live in Almsville, Oregon. I spent a lot of years as a Kaiser resident and former McNary girls soccer coach. My profession is a commercial real estate broker, so the one thing I do understand is real estate and land use. There's a lot I don't understand. But I can speak to, some of, and I'm a part of what's going on tonight. I'm a real estate broker that represents people involved but I'm also, I care about the lights, I care about the area, I practiced at Whitaker, so I understand that area too. And what I'm always trying to work with clients on is what is possible and then what could happen. And in the current code and process, right, a 3, 4, 5 story building, a medical office that goes up a certain height, is a possibility. Apartments, we looked at this property for affordable housing in the past, is a possibility. And they also have heights that look into backyards. And so when we were looking at this project and what does the area call for, there are 3 access points, and the intent would be that McLeod's traffic would stay to local traffic only as much as possible. How would we create a plan within this master plan to make sure that we protect that road as not even an arterial? You can't turn left, right? You have to turn right. So we understood that. But there are 2 other lighted access points, and we would plan the property accordingly. And then we also thought about the neighbors on, how high would this go? We don't want to be looking into backyards. And so right now, as much as housing is necessary, and as we're trying to make that happen, the type of housing that could afford to go on this property based on what's there is going to be more apartment-style housing. And we believe that residences to maybe fill out Dennis is a better plan at this time, but we're still working through that process. And so this text amendment to allow for a quick service restaurant drive-through, and really that's what it is to allow for drive-through, is it will play into the I-5 corridor, and it will loop people in and out of I-5, and the intent is to make sure that that traffic plan does exactly that, keeps people off of those side roads. What's interesting is that the fuel station conversation that came up is really meant to be a neighborhood service item. And so fuel is not going to grab people off of I-5 at that location. It's not, there's going to be something that happens, but they're going to go back out through the lighted exchange. Fuel revenue is actually primarily anticipated to be support for that local neighborhood that's coming in and out, because what option do they have right now to get fuel and to get quick, convenient foods or goods? And so I know this isn't for a specific use, but I come here today just to say this developer, the main developer lives, Chris Anderson, our head GC, lives in Kaiser. He's bleeds blue. And there's a reason why we've enjoyed building some things in this community, and it's a good community to work in, and we want to keep that reputation. So I do know that whether it's this developer or the next developer that comes down, this one's local. This one's not from out of state or outside the area, and they drive the roads every day. They go to church with the people that are driving those roads. And so I do believe in the team that we currently have at the table. I'd hate to scare them away as someone who cares about this community. And I do think that the text amendment process really doesn't allow for anything besides an application. And from my experience, that application is then met with heavy scrutiny, including traffic impact analysis updates and reports, master plans that get community conversation, and we definitely would look forward to, in this scenario, conversations with the local neighborhood association to do our best to address concerns, and we understand some can't be addressed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. All right. So having heard that, commissioners, any questions, comments? Was there anything we need to readdress with either the city attorney or Dina or Shane? Commissioner Grants.
So I know, obviously, there's big concerns about traffic in this area. We all drive this at least weekly, I'm sure. What would the process, Shane, be for any kind of requirements for an updated TIA with a master plan amendment or a new master plan? And then what provisions does the city have to require those kinds of studies for a conditional use permit application?
Sure. Yeah, Joe, jump in and correct me if I lie and say I'm requiring things that I don't legally have the right to require. So generally speaking, for a master plan in the Kaiser Station area, to do an amendment, there's a pretty narrow window that you can do an amendment. And one, you can't increase any square footage. So basically so Area D, everybody knows about Area D and Chick-fil-A, where Chick-fil-A and 7-Eleven and the new construction is happening. I think we did 4 amendments in the course of 2.5 years for that site because people kept changing their mind on where they wanted buildings to sit. And so the master site plan actually locks in like a building footprint or an envelope. And so since things kept getting moved around, they had to move them around. So they'd go through this process. So the amendment process, basically you can't increase square footage and you can have no increase to traffic generation from what was originally approved. And so there has to be, I won't call it a traffic impact analysis, because if there's any traffic engineers in the room, that's a very specific product that gets produced. There is an existing traffic impact analysis for Kaiser Station Area B, and that says this is the uses that were proposed, these are the kind of trips that it's going to generate in the peak and the off-peak and the pass-through, and a bunch of words I don't know, because Shane is not a traffic engineer, and basically then identifying that's why you can only have a ride in and a ride out on Lock Haven. And so it kind of looks at that whole thing. So with an amendment in the future, whether or not a text amendment was approved or not, if somebody comes in tomorrow and says, we want to build something different, same scrutiny, right? They're going to have to show that they're not increasing the traffic in any way, shape, or form. It has to be consistent with that existing TIA, or they would be subject to a full-blown, brand-new master plan approval from scratch, which that also could be done. It just is going to be a lot more costly and time-consuming probably for most folks. Now, as far as a conditional use goes, one of the criteria in a conditional use generally is looking at the adequacy of transportation facilities and utilities. And so staff would be on the hook, and an applicant would be on the hook to justify that the proposal was addressing that criteria for safety and efficiency and traffic flow. You know, it's interesting because I think realistically, with some of the strike-through language in there it's only specific to the Shamawa River overlay area. That language was created back several years ago when Safeway came to the city and said, we want to put a gas station at Shamawa River Road. And we had meetings like this and went to city council, and ultimately staff kind of came up with some language that had some very specific provisions that said, hey, you can only sell fuel and related, it's under, if you're looking in your packet, 2.110.04 subsection C. Those little additional things were all created in 2017 when Safeway was looking at possibly building a gas station in their parking lot. And so, fire district came and had some concerns with operations. So in there, like we layered some additional criteria beyond it just being a conditional use that said you're also going to have to justify how you're going to meet those things. So I think realistically, we did it there. I think in order to make it real clear, there would need to be something embedded in the code that said, hey, and I don't know what that, I don't want to infer what you're thinking, but if Planning Commission said, hey, we're really concerned about traffic and we want them to look at, some sort of a safety assessment or driveway location or, something like that, then I think possibly I would want to see something recommended from Planning Commission where we could tweak some language. Inherently, I think, yeah, we're going to be looking at that. I mean, let's face it, like I'm Kaiser through and through. I've been here my entire life. Like I also have concerns about traffic. I have to live in it. But I'm not a traffic engineer. And so I do have to kind of depend on those traffic engineers. But I think with the conditional use, we absolutely would have the ability to require a greater level of scrutiny. But I do think we probably need to put something in there. And I'm not sure how to write that part, so I need some help.
Sure, so if I can summarize real quick for everybody here. So basically, the original Kaiser Station Area B master plan did a TIA based on the proposed uses. That they used that to generate the amount of trips that would be generated. And then they had to demonstrate that any impacts that those trips were going to have had to be mitigated. And with an amendment, they would have a traffic engineer look at the proposed uses and what those trips would generate. And as long as they're not more intensive than what's currently approved, there would generally just be a memo stating as such, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
You good? Wheels are still turning. All right.
Wheels are still turning.
Shane, I got a Shane question. So the whole drive-through restaurant, gas station, so reason those are like, could we say we're okay with the drive-through restaurant, but not okay with the gas station, or how does that work?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you could, obviously, Planning Commission, you guys are a policy recommending body. Shane is not. Shane implements the policies that get, set by others. So yes, the reason the language is as proposed is honestly, that's what was requested. And the materials that were submitted saying, hey, we want you to consider this, and here's all of our reasons. There's in Ms. Randall's submittal with Brand Land Uses submittal, they kind of talk about some of those elements of how sites could be protected and mitigated and aesthetically pleasing. And so, I mean, from my perspective, I was like, well, okay, maybe. Yeah, so that's really, but yeah, if Planning Commission said, okay, we like this, we don't like this, absolutely, those are things that are within your power to make those recommendations for.
Commissioner Grant's follow-up.
Yeah, my gears finally continued and stopped. So would a new master plan for Area B, would that trigger a new TIA or the same type of traffic memo that was talked about earlier?
Yeah, if it was a brand-new master plan, then it would be a brand-new TIA, because with a full new, and essentially, to do an amendment, it needs to be somewhat consistent with what already was imagined for the site. But there is a lot of flexibility, but you can't make buildings bigger in square footage, and you cannot increase traffic. That's like the two no-nos. If you go into that realm, then it's no longer an amendment. So I think I've talked with Ms. Randall, because she's a land use consultant, has asked me lots of questions about this area. And I believe she feels that her clients that she's working with, and maybe some of the concepts she's privy to that I haven't been quite privy to yet, she feels, I think, that they're going to be looking at probably that amendment is what they think they're going to be looking at. Now, until I see that, and until I get to look at it, and until I confer with my attorney, I'm not comfortable saying, oh, it'll just be an amendment. It could be a brand-new master plan that needs to be applied for. So.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please, Commissioner Witters.
You talked about how an amendment, it can't go larger in square footage, and the use needs to be somewhat similar or in the same vein, I guess, of what was originally imagined. But you had mentioned in the, I guess, the original concept, there was a movie theater and a 24,000 or 26,000 square foot multi-story doctor's office. Now, I realize the size of these, if we, both were to be put there, is going to be much larger than those two, a total of 50,000 square feet or whatever. So how would that still be considered in the same vein? I mean, to me, it seems like a movie theater serves hundreds, if not thousands of people at a time, and, and the doctor's office is, doesn't serve gas and doesn't have a drive-through. So, I mean, how do those jibe, or would they, or is that, am I getting the horse before the cart? Or the other way, cart before the horse, thanks.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I understand the kind of the crux of your question. And I would just say this, so master plan originally that was approved for Airbnb actually goes back before the movie theater quite a few years. Original master plan approval was specific because the transit center came and wanted to develop. And way back in the day at Kaiser Station, there was talk about that actually being a commuter rail platform in that area, which would be super cool, except that's, you know, billions of dollars and 100 years from now that'll probably get built realistically. So they came and the initial proposal was, okay, we've got this doctor's office and then, or we've got the transit center, and they were purchasing land from the city to build the transit center. And then the doctor's office came along and said, oh, we want to buy this corner and we're going to do a radiology clinic. And so those two uses were there. And then actually the rest of the site was proposed to be a couple of just retail businesses. They were just kind of some boxes. I think the thought process was, oh, if a doctor's office comes in, maybe a Walgreens wants to go in or some kind of user like that. And then it just, you know, it's sad and nothing got developed for years and years. And then when the movie theater came along and said, we're really interested, we went through those processes and they came and said, okay, we're going to reimagine this site. At the end of the day, the Kaiser Station document, the Kaiser Station plan document, it kind of envisioned what Kaiser Station would look like. In this area, Area B is called the Retail Service Center. And basically, I'll read it to you because I brought it just so it kind of understands. Basically, the purpose of Area B, it's envisioned that it would offer community supporting retail services such as food stores, personal services, specialty retail. In addition, the plan proposes a completion of Dennis Ray to complete the residential neighborhood nearby. In addition to the permitted uses, a transit station is allowed as a conditional use in the CR zone, consistent to section 2.4 of the Kaiser Development Code. So, and then it kind of lists out a few key issues: site access, buffering between the adjacent residential uses, and traffic operations on Lock Haven. So realistically, whether or not it's an amendment or a brand new master plan, at the crux, the justification for this purpose and the objectives of that area, those are going to have to be justified and borne by the applicant. And ultimately, as the staff person that will review it and offer a recommendation, I'll have to offer a recommendation as to, does that actually meet with that or not? So while I totally get what you're saying on, hey, wait a minute, if it was this and now it's this, well, now if we're going from this to this, how is that the case? Again, it would kind of tie back into, is it consistent with the purpose and objective of that area? And is it meeting those goals and policies? And so, as I said, the information included in your packet, there's some justifications offered in that vein of that, oh, these things can provide retail service. We heard some testimony that would take a certain position. Now, again, you're the policy setter, so you get to kind of determine, does that resonate or not? So, does that help, Rob?
It does. And one other question. The concern about traffic on McLeod was brought up, and I again, seeing the old diagram of the theater, there was the right in and out on Shamawa and then the other entrance. Is that egress on McLeod required? Is that necessary, or is that something that is just imagined and may or may not happen?
Yeah, so I think that's, you know, the master plan that's adopted approved what that master site plan shows. Right. With a master plan amendment or a new master plan, everything is up for discussion at that point in time, realistically. It doesn't, I don't think it locks anything in that was previously approved with this type of a use. So again, I don't know how that shakes out in the public hearing and what all the engineers say, but I definitely hear the sentiment, and I expect that to be a very high-level concern. And as the staff person who works for the city, I have had many conversations with the group that is here tonight and said, hey, traffic is the big deal. Like for me personally, traffic is this big deal of whenever we get to a point of an application, we got to make sure that traffic can work. Like the community is, you know, nobody is going to want this if it blows up the transportation system. So I think people are keenly aware of that. But traffic is a hard one because I think a lot of us, me included, tend to fancy ourselves traffic engineers, but then the actual traffic engineers that have the stamps and all the schooling and the expertise, they tell me things that, oh no, this works perfectly fine. And I'm like, does it though? It doesn't feel like it does. So, and as a staff person who has to write findings and justify those findings, I do have to be able to kind of lean on the folks with the extra letters behind their names in that realm of the engineering world. So.
You good? Any retakes? Okay. A couple other people walked in the room. Going to offer up an opportunity if you have public testimony on the text amendment before us tonight for conditional use in commercial mixed-use areas. Anybody want to comment on that? Sir, I saw you come in. Or you have anything for this?
I don't have anything prepared.
Okay. Gentleman in the back? Okay. All right, so I think that Shane, you did a good job trying to unmuddy some waters. The issue of substance before us is specific to the text amendment to section 2.110, commercial mixed-use zone. Now, this feels a little chicken and egg, right? I think that it's almost impossible to consider this text amendment without potentially considering what might occur, right? I do remember the 2017 hearings. There's a lot of work, all right? A lot of concern, particularly as it related to traffic and what that area would do. I think that there was a lot of thought that went into some, maybe not all of the conditions under a C. So I think that, that's definitely what we're hearing, what we see. I mean, that stretch between those two stoplights is probably one of the crazier drag strips that exist in Marion County. My wife was down there not too long ago and watched a little girl get hit at Whitaker. So I'm sensitive and aware of that. But we're not discussing the merits of any individual project. It's a question of what the policy says relative to the uses in commercial mixed use. And so I want to be really clear that this, Shane, correct me if I'm wrong, but this CM 2.110, is it exclusive to Kaiser Station, or is it generally applied across the entire city?
So the zoning designation generally would apply across the entire city.
Unless otherwise, like the RCOD or anywhere else, correct?
Right. The RCOD is an overlay district that kind of usurps it. The issue is that from a matter of practicality, the land in Area B is, I believe, kind of the last of the commercial mixed-use zoning.
Okay.
Because when we did the River Chair Overlay District, we actually did a comp plan zone change of all of the properties on River Road to turn them into just straight mixed use to provide a little more flexibility to those folks. Right. And so that's where, if theoretically, and actually I had this exercise with my legal department, theoretically, if somebody on River Road wanted to come in and say, hey, we want to do a zone change, and instead of being mixed use and being allowed to do all these same uses that are already allowed in the commercial mixed use, but we want to jump through the hoops and do a zone change so we can have the same exact uses allowed, then yes, this would apply there as well. So, there's kind of a practical structure of how the code works and how the zoning is applied. Now, if there was a big expansion area that happened and new commercial mixed use came on, what that would mean is that anytime, anywhere in the city of Kaiser on a commercial mixed use property, a gasoline service station or a drive-through restaurant is only going to be allowed as a conditional use. So.
Did the state comment on this at all?
No, not this one.
Because it seems to fly in the face of what they're requiring us to do in our very next text amendment.
No comment.
Am I wrong? Am I reading the room wrong on that one? I don't know. I mean, we literally had a conversation about this very issue at our last meeting in March, and so it just seems interesting. Maybe they're asleep over their DLCD. We can only hope. All right, other thoughts or comments? All right, are we comfortable closing the public hearing? Mr. Lindsay, how do you feel?
Thanks for asking. I feel good. It is interesting because the exercise before you really is just determining whether or not it's going to be not permitted or whether it's conditional, which doesn't mean it's a slam dunk. It just means it has to come before you again anyway. And so to a certain extent, and I'm just highlighting this because the idea is, it's not like saying it's an outright permitted use.
Correct.
So you're not saying, we're all good, we're good to go, high five. You're actually just saying, come back and talk to us when you have a plan.
Mr. Lindsay, thank you for bringing that up. And I want to direct that comment specifically to Greater Gupster, because the issue of conditional use, and one of the things that you all have seen that have happened, and I know this is immaterial sort of to what we're talking about, is over the last few years, we've just had to implement a lot of what the state said you shall, right? I know, Rhonda, I've had you come forward and you've expressed some concerns about some uses that have changed in your neighborhood, and you're seeing things that have come in your neighborhood that historically haven't. What a conditional use process requires is notification, okay? And so in the event that something like this anywhere in a commercial mixed-use zone throughout the entire city comes forward, it does require by law adjacent property owners to be notified. And you know, Kaiser's one of those things you can't do anything without everybody finding out about it. And so the chances are, I don't think it's super hard to establish party status in those types of things. And so what I would say is, depending on the outcome of what occurs here tonight, I would just encourage you to stay engaged if this is something you feel very strongly in support, opposition, or neutral about, because this is one of the few bastions of opportunity that you still have as a community to have input relative to development that occurs in your city. There's not a lot of other things. The state's basically taking it away from us, all right?
Sure.
And so, yes.
I would also say, because they were part of a neighborhood association, we give them notice automatically of any land use that
Interesting,
could
okay.
impact them, so they'll
Very
get
good.
double notice.
Very
If they're a
good.
neighbor and if they're.
So there's like a boundary thing within so many feet, et cetera, and so on, but it sounds like, as usual, we go a little above and beyond there, so. Adam, you lean forward like you wanted to say something. Cool. It's not very often the city manager comes and keeps an eye on us, so I'm a little concerned. I'm in trouble. All right, anything to add? Counselor? You're just like, shut up and get it done. I know that look. All right, well, if there's no further comments on this, I'm gonna close the public hearing at 6:58, and let's have a chat. Is there a motion to consider?
Do we have to start with a motion?
No.
That we discussed
I,
first.
well, I don't know, process, Mr. Lindsay,
It's helpful so that you can debate it.
right? Because we
And
closed
then
the
you can
public.
make amendments to it if you need
Yeah.
to as well.
Well, overall, this text amendment doesn't really give me any heartburn. But I think we need to discuss what kinds of things we might add in that would direct staff to look closer at.
So,
And my advice on that is just make sure that they're clear and objective standards, right? If you're gonna put in standards to look at for the conditional uses. So it sometimes is a harder lift than just coming up with them on the fly.
right.
Yeah.
So for example, hypothetically speaking, and I'm not saying this is a motion, but I just want to clarify your intent, Mr. Lindsay. If somebody were to make a motion to say approve, but keep C1, C2 in, that would be favorable,
Not terrible.
not terrible? Okay,
Meaning that would be more clear and objective than just saying like, the movement for clear and objective standards is just so that you don't base your.
it's not, yeah, you
It's
can't
not based on
arbitrarily-
feelings
right.
and emotions and
We
things.
can't
like that.
demand monster trucks be the only access vehicle to come in and out.
Yeah, because they're
But
cool.
no, yeah.
Right.
Probably close the public hearing a few minutes too early there, Commissioner Grants. That's why I asked if you had anything else.
I thought we're in discussion.
No, we have no motion to be in discussion. Let's see.
Are we moving to discuss? What are we doing?
Well, I suppose we can. We can comment before a motion, but yeah, or ask clarifying questions or whatever else. But that really ought to have happened in the public hearing, right?
Yeah.
It is, if your questions are, I mean, part of the public hearing is just the idea of evidence.
Right.
But you guys, your thought processes are helpful for any record anyway, so
Okay.
however you want to have them.
Thank you for the clarity.
I'll start with a motion.
Go for it.
I move the Planning Commission recommend the proposed text amendments to City Council with the changes I'm going to discuss right now. With keeping 2.11004 C 5, 6, and 7.
I like that.
Well, then you can second it.
Oh, I'll
let you.
second it.
Okay.
I was reading.
Okay, so for clarity, the motion is to approve as amended, section 2.110.04, section C, keeping in section part 5, which is must provide screening and buffering to adjacent residential uses and must mitigate the aesthetic impacts of on-site stacking and queuing visible from any public right-of-way or adjacent properties. Part 6, which is employee access management and control standards is appropriate to eliminate and/or reduce conflict. And 7, as it's written, comply with applicable requirements and standards, including but not limiting to Kaiser Development Code. I'm going to fix that acronym for you, Shane. 2.301.04 traffic impact analysis and all mitigations required by such. Traffic analysis must address the operational needs of Kaiser Fire District. So there's a motion by Commissioner Grants and a second by Commissioner Hutchins. Is there any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Grants?
Yes, I'm going to question my own motion.
Can you friendly amendment your own motion? I think you have to withdraw. Go ahead.
Well, I want to make clear that my intent would be to impose those subconditions under gasoline service station section C
Right.
to also section D.
So
Interesting,
it's both
okay.
of them.
So we have, Mr. Lindsay, should we withdraw, restate, or how do you want to do this?
I'm taking notes and there is an audio record of it, but
Okay.
the idea of C 5, 6, and 7 remaining, and then 5, 6, and 7 also applying to D, the drive-through, it will become one.
Yeah,
or
1,
A,
2,
B, and
3.
C.
Right.
But we're hearing you loud and clear.
So since he was the motioner, and if he's going to recommend that as an amendment, and the second accepts it, we don't need to do an amended motion?
Do you second that?
Yes.
Okay, then we just sort of did our own friendly amendment to it.
Great.
Okay.
So we don't have to do an amended motion. Okay, so to be clear, it's C 5, 6, and 7 to become 1, 2, and 3. D, adding 5, 6, and 7 to D, which would become D 1, 2, and 3. All right, any discussion on that?
Chair, could I get?
Yeah, please.
So with the motion, I just want to make sure that this would be in addition to your standard conditional use criteria, master plan amendment criteria. I just wonder if you could give Lawyer Lindsay a little bit of latitude in that, because I think we're going to need to have some sort of a descriptive or clarifying sentence before these kind of 3 criterial pieces. So you get, I think we probably are going to need to add a little sentence in there.
Friendly Amendment 2, as interpreted by staff.
I mean,
Well, what I would propose is up above, right under C gasoline service station, there's a sentence that says located in that area. What you could say is, located in commercial use, mixed use areas, are subject to the following requirements. And then that would handle it. So they don't, so it just doesn't come out of nowhere. So basically use most of that sentence located in, instead of Shamawa River Road restriction area, you say commercial mixed use area.
zone.
And then you say subject to the following requirements.
Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Does that satisfy you?
Yeah, I think so. The big thing for me is I wanted to make sure that I wasn't putting thoughts into the planning commission's mind. My assumption was that this is in addition to the regular conditional use criteria, which is addressed in a very different section of the code, that this is basically on top of, not a replacing of. So I just want to make sure that we have the latitude to craft a sentence that makes that clear
Yeah.
for,
Yeah, because this isn't the only condition, it's
Yeah.
additional conditions. So we
Within
could say following additional requirements if you want.
yeah,
Following additional.
that's what you meant, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Cool. Commissioner Witters?
So based on that last request and comment, does that mean, should we include, I'm not sure what it refers to, but section 2, subject to the provisions in section 2419, is that?
So, C2 says, subject to the provisions, section 2.419, what is that?
Do we need, yeah, do we?
Does that need to remain?
Is that something that we need to keep in there to?
Because it is, it's not referenced later on, 2301.04.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. So service stations are in a, 2.419 is a special permitted use section that applied in River Road and other places when gasoline service stations were as the special permitted use. So it had some design things, lot and area dimensions, lighting, some different design standards specific to a gasoline service station that would be developing elsewhere in the city. It is clearly Planning Commission's prerogative on what they would want to do with that. I didn't necessarily recommend this because this is being applied to an area that is subject to master plan approval.
Right.
So, the master plan approval process may actually desire to scrutinize the site layout more than a kind of a standard section of code, and I wouldn't want to hamstring the policy setters or decision makers.
You know that? Okay. Well, all right, so we're good,
The only other suggestion, I guess, is the same sort of sentence up top below gasoline service stations. We'd want to make sure that there's just the same sort
For
of
the
thing
drive-through
under
windows.
D.
yeah.
And so that would show up, same idea, that the those things located in commercial mixed use areas are subject to the following additional requirements.
Got it.
And then it would be 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, Mr. Lindsay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Counselor?
So I'm just questioning the must provide screening and buffering to adjacent residential uses. Now, with a gas station, it's going to be potentially open more hours.
Right.
So I'm wondering about lighting. Is that included in that? Because with those residential houses right there on Dennis Ray, is there a way to, I don't know, qualify what the lighting can do to those residences?
Is that generally anticipated under the screening and buffering? I mean, I would imagine a reasonable interpretation might include light pollution.
Yeah, so
analysis?
there are some kind of standards in the code that talk about having lighting from commercial and industrial uses that are shining into residential uses. It is, honestly, it's pretty hard to regulate it because you can have a light that's very, very far away and the effects of that light does wash. But so generally the way that it gets applied practically is like direct light sources. And so, maybe cutoff shields will have to be put on parking lot lighting so it downcasts the light. And depending on if you live next to it or not, you might not like it or it might not bother you. I have a street light outside the front of my house. It doesn't bother me, but I sleep like a brick all the time. So, it doesn't, but so I think that's clearly a consideration that could be added in. It's also clearly a consideration that can be addressed in that master planning process as kind of a other issues as determined. And there is some flexibility for policy decision makers to say, hey, we're going to condition the development so that you can't do this in this case. But if Planning Commission desired to put something specific in there, I just don't know that I could come up with something off the top of my head that would be adequate. But if that's something that there's a desire, we could definitely look at that and make a suggestion.
I might have a suggestion, which is, under 5, it does say aesthetic impacts, mitigate the aesthetic impacts. So, you could put a parenthetic and say, to include lighting. And that you have to mitigate those impacts.
Well, if the chicken or the egg didn't exist, I would say the gas stations typically close, and I don't imagine they're selling chicken at 3 a.m. But,
That being so close to the freeway,
well, that's true.
I could see them being open 24 hours in the future. AJ said that they don't think that they'll be pulling off the freeway, but I guarantee there'll be a sign, both northbound and southbound,
Well, In-N-Out
for
didn't.
that. In-N-Out didn't need to because they have a sign on the highway. So,
My concern regarding those two topics are coming up with a clear and objective standard on the fly.
Yep. I generally, Counselor Duran, I think your point is well taken. I think the general applicability of this section, although granted it's basically only in one area in Kaiser, can be fleshed out, it sounds like, under a master plan process with a lot more specificity, understanding during that process what the actual intended uses would end up being. I think to try to ground it now, we'd probably get it wrong in code. I think, I don't hate the idea such as lighting. The problem is, Mr. Lindsay, does that leave it too open-ended or too vague to apply the condition appropriately?
Aesthetic impacts, I would just argue are to the senses, right? So,
Okay.
sound and light would be the two most obvious to me.
Okay. So a reasonable
I-
interpretation could include those?
Yes.
Okay. And I think that in the event that something were to come to a master plan, I think that's, we haven't revisited weird things in master plans before, so. Palm trees. Yeah. Okay, you're okay as is? You're okay as is? All right, we're clear? So we're not adding anything about lighting. I think that we know where that could apply. All right, any final discussion, reattacks, last minute comments for staff before I call the question? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Sounds like motion passes unanimously, so thank you. Good job on this text amendment for this particular issue in the commercial mixed-use zone. Now, I would just like to remind, I understand there's some concern. I just want to remind you folks that came from Greater Gupser, please keep an eye on it, listen, all right? Sign up, make sure you sign up with Dawn. I have full anticipation that the land use consultant will make sure that everybody is aware of opportunities to comment. The city will make sure everybody has an opportunity to comment. I would please encourage you, if something does materialize out of this, be engaged, all right? We can talk to the very substance of those issues as they materialize. I think this is, it's funny because it does feel a little chicken and egg, but this is specific to the code. And so as development may or may not occur, please just stay tuned, okay? okay? And I would encourage you guys to come back if you feel very strongly, one way or another, on that. And so, we just hope that anybody coming in is putting out good information and, yeah, that's all we can ask, so. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next text amendment, which is, do we need a break? Everybody okay? Do we need 5? Okay, let's rock and roll. All right, so we're moving on to our second public hearing, which is text amendment case 2025-05. Kaiser Code Appendix A, multiple sections amending parking regulations to eliminate minimum parking requirements. Lovely. Open the public hearing at 7:16. Mr. Witham, tell us what the state's doing to us. Actually, you know what? Before you get going, I know that you and Dina did your absolute best. I read this, I could feel your fingerprints all over it. Just thank you. I think you got asked by this body to go forward and try to make chicken salad out of chicken scat, and I appreciate it. And so before we even get into this, I just want to say thank you. I think you delivered on exactly what the Planning Commission asked, and the work here is well done, despite what the work here is. So, I just want to say thank you before I end up picking on you at some point.
I appreciate that, Chair Lawyer. Thank you. Are we good? Is public hearing open?
Public
Am I
hearing's
ready to
open,
start
yeah.
talking? Okay.
You're good.
Yeah, so, I mean, honestly, the title line's pretty self-explanatory. We are eliminating minimum parking mandates citywide with this slew of text amendments. There's a whole lot of sections that we're changing. And I tried to address it in the staff report. We could have written, I don't know, a novel of pages. This has been kind of a long time coming. I believe that we were supposed to originally have these things adopted in like over 3 years ago, I think, was the original deadlines. And so we requested some extensions because of some of the other CFAC rules. And so we pushed these things out kind of as far as we could. And then the state came knocking around Thanksgiving this past year and said, Shane, we haven't seen any post-acknowledgement plan amendment filing by you. You have to have parking updated by the end of the year. And I was like, no, I got an extension. And no, not for that section. You got it for this and for this, but not for that. And so, you know, my own error, the state was gracious and they said, hey, get a new request in. We'll consider it. So I put my request in and tried to push it out farther, and they said, yeah, we're not going to give you that one. Sorry, buddy. We'll give you through the end of June of this year because that's the max we've given anyone else in the state of Oregon. So, you know, it's a May 21st Planning Commission meeting. So, I mean, will we actually be adopted in time by this deadline? No, absolutely not. But I have been assured there is no technical planner's jail. So I don't think I will go to a planner's jail for not quite hitting the deadline. But we are here to discuss these changes. And ultimately, you know, we've done a few different presentations on this. I know not probably everybody was on Planning Commission at that time. The state does like to say, oh, we gave the cities options. If you want to price parking, you want to unbundle parking, and you want to provide a certain level of on-street paid parking, and you want to do all these different things, you can keep parking standards or eliminate parking minimums and you're in compliance. And so we kind of talked about this. Planning Commission actually gave their direction like 3 years ago. That was, yeah, eventually we're going to have to kind of go there. Big highlights that I want to share with you. By and large, these amendments are just bookkeeping cleanups where it says you've got minimum parkings. It's no longer going to say that. There are some maximums that are left in the River Cherry Overlay District that we already had. The other thing that's beautiful is I did get some comments back from the state in an email on this one that was basically, hey, Shane, good try, not good enough. So we're going to have to come back and address some things with some standards they have in, I can't remember it off the top of my head. It might be 445, basically for large parking lot standards and some different requirements for landscaping provisions in those. Unfortunately, I got their comments with not enough time. We already had the packet out. And so just for what it's worth, we are gonna have to come back and look a little bit more at our parking lot landscaping standards for parking lots over a half acre in size. I've started looking at some different options, but it made me feel really awesome that I was like, hey, I'm getting it done, and then it was like, no, you didn't do it right. Good, oh, great. But, yeah, it was awesome. But one of the pieces that I put,
Blackberries count?
so one of the pieces I put in the packet was this parking reform map that we recreated several years ago, right? And I know I've shared that with y'all before, but I wanted to show you that as a visual. You know, this parking reform went into effect December 31st, 2022. So literally for the last 2.5 years, we have, everything that's blue on that map, we have not required or been able to apply minimum parking mandates to. Now, by and large in that area, we've actually seen things develop in that area, and none of them have chose to develop without providing parking. Because in talking with the development community that Dina and I deal with on a regular basis, when they talk about parking and we say, well, you know, you don't have to provide any, they laugh at that. And they go, yeah, we do. If we want to be able to rent out an apartment, we're going to have to provide a parking space. If we want to have a commercial business, we're going to have that. So the one thing I do want to say is that as frustrating as some of the rules that have come down from a state level and said, hey, thou shalt do these things, by and large, the state has been, you know, their biggest sell on this for the last 3 years has been, you know, the market really drives what gets provided when it comes to parking. What we're trying to do is eliminate a barrier that sometimes local governments have placed that create a greater expense and reliance on the automobile and all of those things. So I say that because that's my silver lining. I'm silver lining it right there. That's I'm just like, imagine my silver lining highlighter. So I just drew it right around it. Because really, we have not seen, even though for the last 2.5 years, there's been several projects that have been developed that could have developed with absolutely no parking being provided. Not one of them did it. Not one of them, and all of them knew they could do it. Like I had to tell them, like, hey, I can't require any minimums. But if you build a parking lot, your access needs to be wide enough. Your spaces need to be sized appropriately. So we can, if they provide it, hold them to those standards. Yeah. So with these amendments, it truly is, Dina did a great job of going through and finding all the places all throughout the code where we said, oh, this use is a minimum of this parking space. Okay, we can't say that anymore. And so that's really the crux of what this amendment is. Like I said, because of Shane's error, I'm gonna have to come back to y'all again in the near future. I actually just got an email this afternoon because one of the DLCD folks just left for another agency who had been the parking guy. And so now I'm inheriting a new person that I don't know. So they had just reached out to me to talk about this specifically. So I'll be having some more chats with them to get some examples of what I can bring back to address our parking lot landscaping issue. But what we have before you tonight and what I'm asking for your recommendation on, I'm not asking that you necessarily love it or agree with it, but ultimately this does put us on the path to be compliant with those OARs. And if we say, nope, we're not doing anything, we are out of compliance. I mean, I don't know what that means for us, but like that's the reality. So, yeah.
What it means to us, they put us in maintenance mode, for lack of a better term, and they start withholding ODOT dollars. That's the stick. They're getting it from OLCC. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, Rhonda, you signed up. Come on forward, please. I don't know, do you guys have any questions or comments? I mean, we've beat this into glue so much, so. Rhonda, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Please state your name and city of residence for the record. You got 5 minutes.
Okay. Rhonda Rich, Kaiser resident, president of the West Kaiser Neighborhood Association. And I'm here tonight because I just want to express our feelings in West Kaiser, most of the people, residents, and I know that this is state mandated, so Shane, it's nothing against you or Dina. We're, seeing all those strikeouts, no parking minimum requirements is very disturbing. And I know there's nothing we can do about it, but it really is changing the face of our neighborhood and probably some other older neighborhoods who have big lots that are getting subdivided. So this concerns, and also they send out requests for comments, Shane's department, and we don't normally send in any comments because it's like, well, that's the ordinance, and I know that it's not been in writing yet, but it's been in effect to not require parking. And I want to clarify, is that just half a mile from a transit? Or maybe I'd get it at the end so you get my 5 minutes.
Sure.
But, so the street parking will increase. We know that in our neighborhoods. Some areas have, a lot of our West Kaiser has no sidewalks. So to encourage pedestrian walking, it's like, as a city, I think that's one of the long-term goals too, is to get some more doing something about connecting sidewalks. And there's a danger to bicyclists. You're out there with cars on each side of the street. So it just changes the livability of the neighborhood. And that's our main concern. I did have a question. I wanted to read a comment real quick here from Jeff Kelder, who couldn't make it tonight, but he responded to the survey in the WAMU that's online. The plans to significantly reduce or even eliminate on-site parking at residential housing, to me, is a disastrous decision, irreparably harming the livability of Kaiser neighborhoods. Streets packed with cars, with some people owning 5 or 6 vehicles, like my neighbor at the end of my cul-de-sac, destroy the ability to safely bike on these residential streets, as well as the appeal of such a neighborhood, which with these rules creates a parking lot in front of everyone's home. So I've heard too in the past, Marino and Rowan, there's a quadplex, and I went by it today. I didn't see any parking there. So if there's a quadplex, there's 2 drivers per 8 cars parked in the neighborhood. What can we do? Just don't let them do anything more than they've done, please. But I had a question at 2.303.04 on page 68. D4, a parking plan must be approved for all development not served by a public street or for development served by any public street that does not include parking on both sides of the street. The parking plan shall illustrate how minimum parking requirements will be met for all newly created lots. So on Dearborn, there's a duplex.
Rhonda, what was that site you said again, please?
It's page 68, 2.303.04, location and use provisions.
Okay, which one, which sub?
D4.
D4, thank you.
Yeah, so they have duplexes back there. So there's is that a public street that goes back to when they build in infill? And they do have parking in front of those duplexes. And you're right, the market, thank goodness for the market that drives these parking places. But are they required to have parking? No. Okay.
And this is an older provision, I believe. That's why it's not a strikeout, so it's not in red and it's not in addition.
Right, it's not a strikeout.
Yeah, and Rhonda, if you're done with your testimony, I want to address both of your questions, because the first one that you asked was a really
Shane,
good question.
Hold on. Do you have other questions? You said you had a couple, so I want to make sure you have time to.
No, that was it.
Okay, so I'll talk about this one first. So yeah, that D4, it does talk about, so it gets a little bit strange, because essentially when somebody comes in for a partitioning or a subdivision, if they were providing a private access easement, we would say, hey, you're going to have to show us how you're going to provide parking. Now, the state has made us reduce what we can require in those situations. But oftentimes, well, back in the day, we used to say, hey, if it's a private access easement, we're going to make you provide 3 on-site parking spaces for each house that you're building. Now, the state pared that down and said we can't make anybody provide more than 1 per dwelling unit anymore. So that is kind of how that gets applied. So the reality is that if they're providing that parking on their lot, that is effectively their parking plan. Many years ago, We had infill streets for a little short season. And so a lot of those streets were only allowed to have parking on one side of the street. And so with a couple different subdivision proposals, they had to actually show us, hey, we require 2 spaces per house. You can fit this many on the street, this many in driveways. Where's the other 3 spaces that you need? And so like there's a couple little subdivisions that have like a little trade parking that I can remember just because I've been here forever. So that kind of speaks to that. Now, your other question about the transit, and I thank you for bringing it up because I don't think I explained it very well. But I think you raised like a great point. So since December of 2022, that's when OAR, the 440 rule went into effect, which was half mile of frequent transit service, which is basically 15-minute headways. So that's been in effect, which covered most of Kaiser, other than, you got to get like west of, Newburgh, I think. It's about west of Newburgh, north of about the BNS market. So those 2 little quadrants, we could still apply parking standards to. But since 2022, nowhere else in town, because there's a frequent transit line that runs downriver. These rules, the changes we're making now, and the 440 rules, they said also as a city, we cannot request an extension. I tried to get an extension. They said, nope, no extensions granted for this. Everybody's doing this, period. And so now what they've said is, and it's the slew of rules, it's like 405 through 450, I think, in the OARs, and there's a whole bunch of different ones. This is basically responding to, I think, the 405 to 425 or something. I don't know. I can't remember the numbers. But the 440 is the transit line. This is citywide. Doesn't matter about transit service or not. You just can't require parking minimums. So, or you can't mandate them, right? So that's, I think that's that is a big key. We've mandated minimums forever. And sometimes we've had parking issues even when we had minimums because, some family like mine was into the neighborhood with too many kids that has too many drivers in a season of life and all the neighbors don't like you. But this is a hard one. It's a hard pill to swallow for everybody, I think. So but does that help explain?
Yeah, it is citywide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It was good seeing you, Rhonda. Thank you for being here. I'm going to open up the floor. We got some other folks. Y'all want to talk about this? Gentleman in the back, do you want to come forward and say anything? About this particular, yeah, parking. That's the text amendment before us. If you want to come talk about it, come on forward. All right. Other thoughts or comments to Shane questions? Now, Rhonda, I think I want to echo your concern, the on-street parking as the longtime chair of the Watershed Council. I have a lot of concerns about just lining the streets with cars, and you get people with older cars and their oil is leaking into stormwater and all the unintended consequences there. I think it changes visible line sights. I think it is, I always think about when you start driving, they tell you, watch for the ball, because as soon as he sees the ball, there's a kid coming. Well, guess what? You got now, however wide your widest truck might be, and if you're Councilor Duran, he's got the quadruple dually, and so that's like 10, 15 feet wide. And so that changes your sight line, and it changes the opportunity that a driver has to respond to a kid chasing after a ball, and so that really, really concerns me. You drive down any street in downtown Salem right now, and if there are residential areas, you're playing the zigzag game as you're trying to, make your way up traffic, and it does eventually lead to parking passes and all the fun things that, so this is just a long social engineering process to get people out of cars. I don't think that works for a community like ours. We don't have the economic opportunities yet in our city to employ people to the level that is helpful, and I think this is just bad policy. I think the intent here isn't horrible. I think what you all tried to do is exactly what we asked, which was try to make the best out of it. So I'm not going to give you a hard time, because I think we really are making the best of a bad situation, and so I just want to say, again, thank you. I opened with that, and I want to close with that in my thoughts. Unfortunately, Rhonda, you're right. This is exactly the kind of thing that we're going to see continue to happen at the state level through policy that really doesn't actually take into consideration the impacts it has to communities like ours. So it's frustrating. I don't want to see people get hit on bikes, especially kids. I don't want to see anybody, if they're choosing to commute on a bike, it congests things way too much, and it's frustrating. So just my own personal comment on the record for that. Commissioner Witters.
I don't know that you would have the answer to this, but just in case, isn't there something in code about how cars can't sit in the street they have to be moved every so often, or do you know if there's anything about cars in like on your grass or anything like that?
Yes. Yes, we do have rules. There is, basically, we have I call it the parking ordinance. I don't know what the title of the ordinance actually is, but we've called it the parking ordinance forever. So citywide, we have a parking ordinance that on public streets, if you have a vehicle, park it on the street and, a legal place, not in front of a hydrant, not too close to an intersection. And you can do that for 72 hours, and the car's supposed to move essentially every 72 hours. And if they don't move every 72 hours, or if they're dismantled, or if they're not licensed or not insured, then you can't park those on the street. The hard part practically is the enforcement of that. That tends to be a lower level priority for our police department. Our code officer does a great job. Basically, it's the code officer and one person in the patrol unit or motors unit normally who responds to those parking calls. I think, I just looked at the numbers. I want to say we had like 600 parking complaints last year. And that's on top of all the other things that we do. So it is, it's a tough one to enforce. It's a tough one to regulate, but we do currently have a rule. We also conversely have a rule that basically says, hey, if you're going to park a car in your front yard, well, let me rephrase. You're not going to just park a car in your front yard. You can park a car in the front yard if it's an area that qualifies as a driveway. Now, if you're like me and you're saying like, hey, I'm going to save the environment and I'm going to wash my car in the front grass, like we actually want you to do that, but that's not parking the car. I may or may not leave my car in the grass overnight because it's a Jeep and it's like, oh yeah, look at that. I just four-wheeled it in my yard for one night. But no, generally you can't park in the yards. You're supposed to park on a driveway area, and we do have some rules in our development code that would address that. Again, complaint driven, we're not out patrolling for that, but we do have some tools that would say, hey, you need to park on appropriately surfaced areas if you're parking. So, does that help?
Yeah, and I was, based on the letter that Rhonda read, it just seemed that, obviously, it sounds like it's not ideal, but if there are the areas with the cars that are, they've turned their front yard or the front street into a parking lot, at least, there is some sort of recourse that they can at least pursue. So it's not ideal, like I said, but it's,
The nuisance level has to get pretty gosh darn high. Ben's out there chasing some really heavy-duty code enforcement stuff that has much farther reaching implications than somebody parking a car for 4 or 5 days. Ben's a one-man band. He does a great job. But he's got some really, really tough things happening there, and you're right. It's...
No, I know what you're saying, and I understand the reality of the situation, but at the same time, what you were talking about, like with kids in the street and balls, that is a real concern, and hopefully, we don't want to be reactive about something, and we want to be proactive, and like I said, it's not ideal. I don't know that anything would come out of it, but at least, if there is some sort of avenue, and if it's bad enough, if they hear enough about it, maybe that would, move it up the priority list. Not every car parked on the street, but if there's any really bad situations,
It's a great point. So much fun. All right. Any others?
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Brands.
I would like to thank you personally for bringing this at such a late hour that you were concerned about Planner Jail.
Well, if planner jail, you actually have to become a surveyor. That's the real planner jail.
That's brutal. That's outside, like, that's brutal. I don't wish that on anyone.
And not the one that identifies land. They call, hey, I want to hear about your favorite kind of dog.
Right, right. No, I mean, I think exactly what Chair Lawyer has said. I think this is horrible policy for any jurisdiction that is outside of Portland Metro, and probably just downtown Portland. I hope that some of our state representatives are listening to us right now. Not every provision that suits Portland suits every other community in Oregon. I doubt they are listening, but I want to say it and appreciate what you've done.
Yeah, I think that's well stated. I mean, we sat, way back when we were doing this, we sat here in the ROCD and specifically talked about trying to create very methodical and thoughtful bike paths, particularly around the West Kaiser side, to improve that transit opportunity. And they've just kind of handcuffed us, and it sucks. And I think it's going to fundamentally inhibit that opportunity. I think that you had a vision when we talked about this many, many years ago. Nate was here back then, and it's like, hey, we could do this really cool striping. Guess what? That's gone. Without completely eliminating, I don't know, whole entire streets for purposes of what they're intended to be. So, it's dumb. Sorry, editorial comments over.
Now that we're sufficiently depressed.
We're really trying to put lipstick on it. They did a good job with the text amendment. I'm very thankful. I mean, they really, Dina did a great job doing this, and Shane's taken 47% of the credit. But yeah, good job, Dina. Thank you. All right, any other comments? I'm gonna open it up. Any reattacks? No? Okay. Let's close. Do we need to discuss any more before we? Joe? Or excuse me, Mr. Lindsay?
Yeah, I think you're fine, because you can, if you're closing the public hearing, you guys can still discuss at
Fair
your
enough.
leisure, but you can also then make a motion and
All right,
debate it that way too.
let's close the public hearing at 7:44.
Ready for a motion?
Yes? That look on your faces, I don't know. Go ahead, Commissioner Grants.
We ready for a motion?
I'm on pins and needles.
I move that we recommend not approving the proposed changes to city council. I don't expect a second, but.
You can do that. I mean, you're an advisory body and they'll hear the same thing. We just.
Purely a
said
symbolic
to-
motion.
Yeah. God, you jerk. As the city attorney, right, the problem here is we actually, the city of Kaiser resisted this in a very aggressive way.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Right.
The only thing really we got out of it was that they can't suspend our TSP or yeah. But, no, this is one of those things where thank goodness that we have reasonable marketplace folks and our community's reasonable, because I do think that just sort of means that this doesn't annihilate us. It means it'll have a few annoying consequences here and there, but I think by and large, I think people will be normal,
Well,
hopefully.
I guess we probably can't have discussion on this because we don't have a second, right?
Oh, well, there you go, sorry.
Is there a? Well,
Yeah.
I withdraw my motion.
I really wish you wouldn't.
I was
And-
still thinking about it.
I mean, God, I hate substantive brain. Because the actual practical implications of this, if we don't adopt code, the city chooses not to adopt code, is that the model code effectively becomes, and they actually don't even have model code for this. It's basically just, we can't require parking, period. And anything that you all baked in to preserve anything goes out the window.
or could be resisted.
Shane?
Well, it's a little bit different.
Because there's no model code, right?
Right, there's no model code, and this is a compulsory kind of requirement that said when the CFAC legislation was written, the OARs are breaking up into all, it's all in section 660-12-0405 through like 0455, I think. Certain provisions said in them, cities adopt it by this date, or modify your plans and zone codes by this date, or apply this provision directly, which is what we did with the half mile to transit. We never advertised that that was the rule.
Yeah.
But like technically, and I got a lot of grief from the state that said, why haven't you updated your code? And how are you telling people this? I'm like, I'm just telling them when they come in. Don't worry about it. Is there anything in the OER that says I have to do something? Do I have to publish a document? So they're not best friends with them. They didn't love my orneriness, but we all get along good. The issue we have right now is that these rules were actually in a work program that I had to submit to the state to buy us time 3 years ago. And I said, hey, we're going to go ahead and do this. So we got that acknowledged by the governor's office and the director of DLCD. And so now they're basically saying, hey, city, you told us you were going to do this. Show me the money. So it's a little different. I don't actually have the ability to simply say, oh, we're applying the standard directly. I really am just out of compliance with what we were compelled to do. The bigger question is, what does that exactly mean? I don't really know. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to planner's jail, but
Well, the threat has been they withhold transportation money.
yeah.
Well, and likely grants, which
Right.
helps Kaiser a lot. So,
Well, and I will say, if you have a code that is sort of out of compliance with state law, right, then you run into this problem of then what still does exist in your code. So I would say we don't want to throw out all
No,
of it.
Right.
Yeah,
Because what was taken out, and I think that was my point, right? Which is the stuff that's taken out is what it is. But the rest of the code, particularly as it relates to these issues, there's still some a semblance of merit remaining in those. And as much Commissioner Grants as I would really have loved to have jumped on board with your second, I think it is our duty to represent the best interests of the people of Kaiser. And I think that anything that we could do in a policy recommendation that would threaten the ability to do sidewalks, the ability to maintain ADA ramps and access, or widen streets, or do a traffic management plan or a transportation impact study via a grant, I think that would be inappropriate for us to do, as much as I hate that part.
I understand.
I
understand. And that's why I withdrew the motion.
I know, I know.
If you're ready for a.
I
another
was
motion-
with you emotionally,
Okay,
but we have to work with facts and law.
I know.
Do you want to put it, the other way, you want to put a motion on the table? I think Commissioner Grants has said that.
It's like his thing.
I just read. I move the planning commission recommend approval of the proposed text amendments to city council with no changes, along with any other identified changes necessary to maintain consistency with Kaiser Code.
Can we add reluctantly?
No.
In the discussion you made. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Motion by Commissioner Grants and a second by Commissioner Hutchins. Is there any additional discussion? No? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? You get that in a couple weeks, Counselor. Motion passes unanimously with 3 absent. Yeah. It's unanimous passing, but I think it's good job. thank you for doing what we asked and representing what this body asked, and I think you did a good job. This is not a Dina and Shane attack at all. We'll blame Mr. Lindsay. I'm just kidding. Actually, we'll blame Shannon for not winning that trial. I'm kidding. All right, any new old business?
There was one thing that I wanted to make sure, just a reminder, we have an expectation that this body is going to be overseeing a public hearing on the properties on River Road there by McNary Estates Drive. So we've received some information on that. We're working through reviewing that. We're going to be scheduling that. So just a reminder, you're a decision maker. Don't talk about it outside of the public hearing, kind of, I don't know what that, whatever the lawyer would say. Whatever that word is, ex parte contact, yeah. So.
Avoid it, and then if it happens, just make note of it so that you can present it and at the hearing. So you can say, I did have a conversation on such and such date, I have an open mind.
But the idea of that also extends to anything in the media, any site visits, any, anything that's introduced, or can be considered to be introduced as part of the record that would not be otherwise occur in a public process.
Well done, thank you.
Correct?
Yeah, so avoid that, but if you happen to have it, just make note of it so that you can put it on the record that you ran into it.
And just a reminder, if you are exposed ex parte, you have to cure it at every step of the process, not just once, correct?
It's helpful to make a good record that way, yes.
I just went back through all the ethics trainings on OGAC. It was best nap I've had, particularly as it relates to ex parte communication, not the other ethics stuff. It was all wonderful. All right.
And then just one other piece, it was alluded to earlier, but our transportation system plan, we are moving forward with getting that project going, and I've been having some meetings with the ODOT folks and the consultant, along with Bill Lawyer. They're working through the scoping process. It's not all quite done yet, but we're getting closer. So the good news is we are going to be moving forward with that. The other one little plug, I believe it was just earlier this week, I think we sent out to y'all and some other interested folks. We have a very brief little survey up for some of the walkable design standard survey. The 0330 rules is what we call them, but it's a pretty short, brief survey, but we would encourage you and anyone listening, anybody in the audience, it's up and available on our website. Just kind of ask some questions about biking and walking.
Who designed that?
What's that?
Who designed that survey?
Our consultant.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So, but it's a pretty short and sweet one. But hopefully getting some input back as next month, we will probably have our consultant back to share some information.
It's a very interestingly worded survey. Mm-hmm. Check it out. Go to kaiser.org, look at the banner. I'm sure you'll see it, or check out social medias and it's on there. Please make sure you take a look at that survey.
And one more thing that I almost forgot. Next Tuesday on the 27th, we have a town hall. We have a town hall meeting in the living room out here where we're inviting the public and y'all and everybody who wants to come to talk a little bit about the urban growth boundary and some of the dynamics around that and what that looks like for us. And we want to hear from citizens of Kaiser. We had one of these here a couple weeks ago on a Saturday morning. A decent amount of people showed up and we got to hear some good input. So I wanted to make sure to invite everybody. It is 6 to 8?
6:30, right?
Okay. So Tuesday the 27th. So.
Mr. Lindsay, because I have to be a procedural dork.
Yeah.
We all may be invited. However, if we have a quorum show up and considering the nature of what that conversation is, talk to us about what that looks like to make sure we don't.
Thank you.
Run afoul of any rules.
Yeah, so here's the deal. If we know that you're going to show up, a quorum of you, it's helpful to post a quorum notice.
Right.
It is, if there is a quorum of you, what you shouldn't do is deliberate. And so, because what that does is that turns a simple
Serial
quorum into a serial meeting, or a public meeting. It just so happens this is going to be here at a public setting that, you know, we meet a lot of the requirements anyway, because there's access and even notice. But what we don't have is, we haven't noticed that you guys are going to meet. So I could say, you guys should not participate in a way that deliberates, because this will come before you. The urban growth boundary, at some point, it's a subject that will come before you in one way, shape, or form. So don't, it's a listening session mostly for the public to come in and say their piece. So that's my admonition.
So you use the term deliberate. So in that setting, would that be just listen, don't
Yeah.
speak, don't?
Don't give opinion or argument, or, you know, yeah, you can, well, you could ask questions, and get sort of clarification from what you're listening to, but not, what you don't want to do is
Don't voice
like,
my opinion?
basically,
Gotcha.
or argue.
Well, I think,
Yeah.
I actually think there's nothing that prohibits you from voicing your opinion, you just can't participate on the record later on, correct? I mean, if Commissioner Grants felt very strongly as a private citizen in Kaiser, he could say whatever he wants, but that may preclude his ability to participate actually in substantive discussions relative to that plan, correct?
Yeah, that's, it, yes and no, because that's kind of a complicated, what I don't want to do is just create, basically what it does is it creates a 60-day problem.
Right.
Because you'll have a meeting without properly noticing it.
Right.
And then somebody could write in to me and complain about it, and then I'd have to write whether they were right or wrong and send it to the Ethics Commission.
Okay.
So I mean because I wouldn't necessarily want to say I would tie his hands as his position here, but it could technically violate the public meetings law, which can carry with it up to a $1,000 fine for yourself and everybody on your body.
I just know that this is a very sensitive subject out there in social media land, and so I don't want any of the planning commissioners to run afoul of this. Dawn, please make sure that some piece of this gets to the folks that aren't here, because I don't want anybody to get busted on it. So I just want to be very, very clear about what our expectations and limitations are.
And it looks, you know, it always looks better to follow all the rules. It looks badly if they say, yeah, you guys failed and you owe us $1,000.
There's just there's a lot of work here, and I don't, where these things fail is procedural. And I don't want us to be the cause of anything that creates a procedural issue. So thank you for allowing me to clarify that.
Sure. Well, thank you for allowing me to
Well, we
admonish
just, you know, we needed a little bit of nerd talk at, 7:45 at night on a Wednesday. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Question for Mr. Lindsay, which is for your benefit, is we have a video online that you can look at. It's on our website, kaiser.org/urban growth boundary. There's also a survey
Right.
there. Can they participate in the survey?
Yeah, because depending on how the results are put out there, it should be blind to them. And so the idea with any serial meeting is that you know how your fellow board member, so it's almost like you can count votes and test the waters in advance. So that's why we want deliberation where it's controlled and the public gets to see it, because you guys don't want to secretly give each other a heads up of how you're going to vote ahead of time, basically. So if they're not privy to the results of the survey themselves, then it doesn't offend and cause them to inform each other ahead of time about how they would vote.
Okay, so that's a way you guys can participate.
Great. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Brown. Did you have another, or were you telling me to go look at Mr. Brown? Cool. All right, Councilor Duran.
We made it through budget so far. Hasn't come to council yet, but that was a big lift last week. At Kaiser Fest, you guys, we all made it through that. I would say coming to the town hall would be a good thing, because it's not going to be recorded, right? So just coming to hear people would be a good thing. I was at the last one, and just getting people's comments and just understanding how people feel is a good thing. If it was recorded, then I'd just say watch the recording.
Yeah.
But if it's not, so I think it would be a good thing get the, kind of the feel of how people are, in the discussion, so. I think that's all I have. Do you have any questions for me?
No, Mr. Lindsay looks like he's fixing to say something.
I was going to remind you that you have a fundraiser. I don't know if this is another opportunity.
I was gonna bring it up, thank, no,
Oh, shoot.
go ahead.
I'll bring up the fundraiser. Thank you for reminding me. And I gotta go to my sheet because I can't remember all the stuff.
Well, I can tell you. I wasn't paying attention.
You were paying attention?
Of course.
Okay. There's a benefit for the Kaiser Gold Star Memorial Monument. We're calling it the Summer Getaway Benefit Concert. It's a private concert, May 31st from 7 to 9 p.m. It'll be a ticketed entry. Tickets are $20. We're just doing this partially to raise money, but also to keep track because we can only fit 90 people in this space. It's called the Bad Space. It's a Santiam Brewing's event space. All the money's going to the Woody Williams Foundation for the Gold Star Memorial. The Electroacoustics will be playing, and then there will be auction and raffle. We're auctioning off getaway packages to the Bend area and the Oregon coast. And there'll be some gift baskets that'll be auctioned off also. I think you got any more to add?
Well, I just want to say thanks. So I've worked a lot on this project. I just wanted to say thank you to you and Councilor Christopher for kind of pulling this together. And the vacation packages are pretty awesome. I got to tell you, March was incredible for this project. We did just over $16,000 in fundraising in about a 4-week period. So the Elks brought in about $4,000. Bowling, I think we did just over, what was it, $5,800. And then a couple weeks later at Rotary, we did $6,200 for this project. And so if you've noticed, the groundbreaking happened on April 26th, which happened to be Ryan J. Hill's birthday. So that was a really powerful event. And we've got the foundation put in. And is your news public? Okay, so we got the grant from Oregon Parks and Rec, and so we're really excited about that. And, once you make a project city, it just complicates everything. But Adam's trying to navigate all that, and I'm annoying him as much as I possibly can to try to make this work out for the best. But we're super thankful for it, and we got a lot of additional fundraisers coming up, and it's a really, really good project. And I'm so grateful, as always, for the city to jump on board and really get behind this. It's been a lot of work very, very quickly, and so thank you to everybody that's contributed. And if you got tickets, they can email you, or the QR code's out there, right? Folks can get the tickets for it. If you buy tickets through the website, just send a copy of your donation to Woody Williams to Councilor Duran or Councilor Christopher and make it happen. Good times, great oldies.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Witters, are you good for June 16th for council report?
Yes.
Great. I will say this Saturday is the annual Saga Day in the Park at Kaiser Rapids Park. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Matthew Miller Barbecue is going to come out. He's going to be giving out some macaroni and cheese cups with pulled pork. We got a bunch of wonderful groups coming out and just going to have a really great day. Mark Callier is in town, so we're going to have jet boat rides. So if you haven't had the opportunity to do a Mark Callier jet boat ride and learn about what Kaiser Rapids actually is, it's not a park. It's actually a thing. Come check it out. City of Kaiser will be out there with the backhoe, and just a super great free event. And I'm sure we'll see Rhonda out there as always. And very excited for that. And then coming up in June will be the yet to be determined date for the Big Toy rededication. So we're going to be doing some pressure washing and stuff here in a couple weeks. And then we're going to get talented people, not me, out there repainting and making it beautiful. So, any other comments, thoughts? What do you state, Mr. Marks? Are we done? Cool. All right, we stand adjourned at, June 11th is the next meeting. How does that make sense? Is Commissioner Witters going to have 2 reports then in June?
No, you can report the June 2nd meeting, that's fine.
The June 2nd instead of 16th? Does June 2nd work for you, Commissioner? Okay. Sorry, I don't do math in public. It's a very important thing. All right, we stand adjourned at 8:04. Thank you, everybody.